Alright guys, welcome aboard to the Heavy Metal Truckers. We are your hosts. I am Pincushion, that is Frosty, and this is Doppler. And in this video, we are going over the latest album from Behemoth. It is called The Shit of God. And so I will let one of you guys go first.
So, I don't even remember the first time I heard of Behemoth. I've known about it for a long time. I've heard songs here or there. I've never really been a fan. They've never really been a band that's like grabbed my attention or pulled me in, or that I've been like, yeah, I want to listen to them again. The only positive thing I ever saw from them is from some of the live videos. I could tell they put on a pretty cool show.
Oh, they
Where
put
like
on an amazing show.
They would probably be cool to see live, but they're not. They've never been a band that
I've seen them
would
twice.
go out of my way to listen to. Now,
We know.
for once, a band you've seen that I haven't. Normally, it's the other way around.
I know.
But anyway,
Imagine that.
it's only because I've been around longer, been to more concerts.
Yeah. I didn't go to
At least over
shit.
the years, anyway. You've probably been to more lately, like in the last few years, than me. But
I mean, I have.
yeah. But anywho, off topic. Going through and listening to this album is what really made me realize the difference in sound quality from when we record on here to in person.
Yeah.
Because I remember when we listened to the title track on here, which I think was the first one we did.
It was the first one released.
I didn't really care for it at all
Yeah.
when we recorded it. Or we did the video on here. Listening to it in the album though, it sounded completely different.
It does.
For me. I still wasn't the biggest fan of it. I still think lyrically it's pretty cheesy. It still reminds me lyrically of like Valley of Disease from Avatar. It feels like a song that a high school kid got together, threw some lyrics together they thought sounded cool, and threw some music to it. But musically, musically was probably one of my top 3 favorite songs on the album. If you ignore the lyrics and just listen to it musically, I actually really enjoyed it. Whereas we did it on here, it was just you know.
Yeah.
And even funny enough, the song that I liked the most when we listened to it on here, which was
Shadow
or
Elite.
something like that.
Oh,
Luciferian.
Luciferian.
Yeah. Listening to it on the album, I didn't really care for it.
Now, do you think that's the
didn't-
track itself or where it was on the album? Because that surprised
I
me.
think it was more the track itself, because I found it to be like when we listened to it on here. I don't know what it was, but there was things about it that just caught my attention, and I enjoyed the groove of it, and I enjoyed all that. But then when I listened to the album, it felt a lot more dull. It feels weird saying that, but it did for me. Now, again, that's just personally. You know. Now, my favorite song on the album, going through and listening to it.
Go on, you're fine.
Did the cats just do something funny?
I'll explain later. Hold up. Continue on.
I think a cat just got into something.
Possibly.
But anyway.
It's all good. Hold up. It's gonna get funny.
I do. I guarantee you it's a cat. Because they do crap.
Yeah, possibly.
But, my favorite song on the album was the last song we did a review of, which I don't think you were here for, Frosty.
The last song we did a review on, that I was a part of was Luciferian.
Yeah, we did the Sowing Salt, or whatever it's called,
Hold up.
the last time we filmed. You weren't here with us.
Oh,
I
that
don't
was
think it's
what,
gone
the
up
other
on the-
week or something.
Yeah, it hasn't even gone up on the channel yet.
Yep.
That was probably my favorite song on the album.
Other way.
This, yes, he is chasing a cat, 100%.
Oh my
The joys of cats.
Jesus Christ.
I can say this because I have 4.
Be free.
But anyway,
Yeah, now he does too.
Yeah, he does too. Yeah.
Here, I'm gonna fix this.
See,
There's a
this
keyboard
is
in the background.
these are the joys of having cats because they get on your nerves, but you laugh at the same time when they're doing it. So anyway,
Oh yeah.
this was an album
Sorry
that,
about that.
did you have fun chasing a cat?
No, it was one of the toys. I'll explain later.
Oh lordy. Anyway, and I just told him that my favorite song on the album was probably the last one to review, the Sowing Salt or whatever it's called.
Something so, yeah.
Yeah. But overall, the album was kind of hit or miss for me. There were some songs like Sowing Salt that I really enjoyed, and then there were others that were just kind of bleh for me. And and the title track wasn't the only one where I felt like the writing was kind of cheesy off the top of my head. For the life of me, I can't remember. There was another song I felt that way too, but I can't remember which one it is. I don't know. I can't remember. I might be mixing an album up here. I don't know. I think was it this one that the last song was different than a lot of the rest of the album, or was that a different album?
Probably, yeah.
So for me, it was overall it was a decent album. You know, from a production standpoint, it was good, but taking everything into account, not just production, but you know how I felt listening to the album, everything for me, it probably was about a 6.75.
Okay.
This is one where I will probably disagree because he's a Behemoth fan. I've never really been. It's
Now,
not very often we disagree.
I will
It,
put some biases aside.
um,
Shut up.
but it's not often he and I disagree. But there might be. You can probably count on one hand the amount of times we disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not a bad album by any means. It's just, for me, it was very up and down. There were some good songs on there, and then there were some songs that just didn't do nothing for me. You know, overall, I gave it a 6.75.
Gotcha.
Well, I know me and will disagree probably more than you. I think we have.
It's okay.
But I mean,
I won't cry. I'll cry later.
Cry later. Come on, we've had some like strong, not arguments, but debates between.
Oh, we've
what
definitely
we
got
both
into
like
debates.
and all that.
The biggest debate Pincushion and I have ever had was who sang "I Will Always Love You Better." That's probably the biggest debate we've ever had. Disagreement when it comes to music.
Moving on.
But anyway, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. But yeah, no. So I mean, I have no qualms in the world telling you that Behemoth is not necessarily my all-time favorite band whatsoever. I got introduced to them by Pincushion. Was it right after God Equals Dog came out, or like sometime after that? It was somewhere back
Really?
then.
That was the album?
Yes. That was where I was introduced to Behemoth.
I'd almost have to disagree on that, man.
Well, I know that's where I got introduced to them.
Maybe
That was the very first song I ever heard from them. I've heard, what is it? One of the songs that they did was Bartzabel, and that one was actually very well done. I really enjoyed that one.
I'm going to have to let you listen to another
song,
track or two because I could almost guarantee you it was sooner than that you've been introduced to them.
No, it was God Equals Dog. That was the very first one. I know that for a fact.
That's interesting.
Yeah, this is one of your favorite groups. This is definitely where I know that you are the person that introduced me to them. I know that.
Maybe really fully
care about our friendship.
Well, I understand this, but like maybe fully introduced them to them, but
that song is not that old.
Yeah, because it's not like that was God Equals Dog was on their the album before this. Like I do not see how that
albums ago.
Yeah, that was only
now
that was 2 albums. My dude, I probably introduced them to you before the Satanist album. That was Yeah, I
I
can.
swear it was God equals dog.
No, because no, there's
That was
no way.
2018.
Yeah, we're talking Evangelion era is whenever I at least let you hear them
That was
or got you.
2018. What was it though? I swear it was God
N-
equals dog was the
no, my
very first
dude.
one I ever remember.
No, like 09, 2010, we're talking, dude.
Then you showed me them way back when, and I don't remember that.
Yeah, you
So
don't remember because I was listening.
that's a first.
I was going crazy on Evangelion at that time because that's whenever they had At the Left Hand of God, and that was one of my favorite tracks.
Well, that's a first for me because I know that
Like I'm gonna
typically
show,
you're the one who forgets.
yeah, typically, but I'm going like it's because I wasn't as into Behemoth as I am now, but I still really enjoyed them. But
Yeah, you were heavier on Lamb of God
yeah,
and Impending Doom way back when.
yeah, but I like there is one track I will show you that yeah I have at least let you know about them. It's been so long that I've probably forgotten about it. 'Cause shit, at that point that's been like 15 years.
Yeah, probably. Well, anyway, he
Yeah,
said I learned about them 2009, 2010, somewhere around there.
and then
Okay,
it
cool.
did just kind of fall off. So I forgive you for it. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm old enough. I'm I'm allowed the occasional like memory loss.
Yeah.
Um, Cushion's the one who introduced me to Behemoth. Um, I've never been a strong
Yeah.
black metal
Continue on. I'll be right
listener.
back.
Yep, never been a strong black metal listener. However, I mean there's some songs that he's shown me by them that kind of stood out and I enjoyed. He knows my musical tastes well enough to know that like anything symphonic he'll typically send my way because that's where a lot of music gets my attention. Like I said, Bartzabel was one of the ones that I remember him sending me that was just holy crap, really good. But yeah, no. Anyway, this album, I didn't get to do the review of the Shit of God when y'all did that, and
No, I
I
don't think so.
Sorry, I
didn't
had to get
get
the proper attire.
yeah, yeah, that's truthful. Um, but yeah, no, I didn't get to do the review of the Shit of God when y'all reviewed that single, and I didn't get to review the last one that y'all did, which was
Sowing
what
salt.
the
So
Sowing
so yeah.
Salt. But I did get Shadow of Elite and then Luciferian. I definitely see what you're getting at as far as the cheesiness to the Shit of God there, Doppler. It kind of was almost laughable as I was listening to the song on the album. It was like, okay, well, here, we're going to throw this in just to be corny and we'll still get the message out. That was kind of how it felt to me. Shadow Elite, I mean, I enjoyed it again. And Luciferian was definitely my favorite song on the album. I definitely think it transferred nicely between the time that we had listened to it and reviewed it to when it got put onto the album and we listened to the album as a whole. Um, so I slightly disagree with you there. It's not something that I'm going to actually go and search out all the time because I'm not a big black metal listener. But at the same time, there are some songs that like symphonically grasped my attention, and then there are some that were just they almost felt like they were just thrown in. But other than that, I mean, it was a pretty decent album nonetheless. I'd probably give it about a 6 to 6.5 as well.
So
And here comes the analytical,
So we
analytical
got a
aspect of this.
6.25 and a 6.75.
do what now?
Said he basically gave it a 6.25. I gave it a 6.75. So we weren't too different. What do you got over there?
If you must ask.
Mr. Analytical.
So in comparison to the others, I have been a Behemoth fan for a very long time. You could more so say I really became a fan of them whenever they released a Satanist. I greatly enjoyed them. I probably got on board with them between the era of Zolsky Occultus and Evangelion.
Excuse me.
And so, really been a fan of them for a long time. Really enjoyed them for a long time. Became like true fan, like real fan, like some time ago. So I greatly enjoyed how intense they were within Zolsky Cultus, and then they kind of dropped down and became a little bit more on the, I don't want to say atmospheric, but they kind of softly more pummeled within Evangelion, which at the Left Hand of God, which is one of my favorite tracks from them, from like more back in the day and whenever they were more black and death metal. Like that's whenever they kind of dropped their black metal necessarily and they went more black and death. But they've gone through a lot of changes. The Satanist album was, as many would consider, the magnum opus of their journey, and it's where they kind of begin to really understand more the atmospheric aspects of it. And then we had I Loved You at Your Darkest, which really, God Eagles Dog was probably one of the best tracks on that album besides like Bartzabel, and I want to say A Father of Satan, a Son is on that album as well, and that was just a masterpiece, is mildly putting it. And then you had Opus Contra something. It was an interesting name. It was, in my opinion, better than I Loved You at Your Darkest. So we had their most recent album before this one. I couldn't necessarily, I honestly struggled to get into because it was more of like an atmospheric album and kind of more concept album, really. And Nurgle delved more into being experimental with that album. And then we have The Shit of God. Now, The Shit of God, as cheesy of a name as it comes across, the reason that they chose that name is because Nurgle has always been very meaningful, and he's always been very, there's a message within a message, basically. And so he likes to be deep within his material, even though most people may just look at it on the surface level. Being The Shit of God, they took it from, if you take IHS, which most people come to interpret it as, I'm probably going to say this wrong, Istos Hominum Salvator, or Jesus, Savior of Mankind, or there's been other interpretations like In Hoc Signo, or In This Sign. Behemoth is very much, he's Thelemite, but it often confused with Satanist, or it's been synonymous with Satanism. He took that, inverted it, and if you take that and invert it, it looks a lot like it says shit. So in his way, he's saying we are the adversaries of God. So that's really where that comes from. And anything else is more of just, which we've explained this before, there may be some kind of more not really misaligned, but like differences of translation or differences of getting their word across, and they may choose more simplistic aspects because they are from Poland. And Nurgle's at a point now where he doesn't give a flying fuck. He'll make what he wants, and if people like it, cool. If people don't, then fuck you. Now with this album, I recently saw an interview with him where and I loved this because he was in Helvete, which was the shop that I think Euronymous was his his stage name, and Oystein was his real name. I think I might be wrong. It's been a while since I've studied the history of Norwegian black metal. But that was the shop where so many of the second wave of black metal artists came to be, such as Dark Throne, Bertram, Mayhem, which Mayhem, everyone knows, in the black metal realm they have the most tragic and really messed up history to cover. And so they did an interview in that room, which is extremely historic. And Nurgle in that room stated that, and I loved this, they wanted to make a shorter album because people have the attention spans of a fucking gnat and can't even watch a 15-second video these days. So what's the point of making an really going into a creative aspect and making an album that's like an hour long, like hour 19 minutes, just really delving into creativity. Let's just get to the point, do what we want to do, and just move on. And he really emphasized that how he wanted to go back to a classic aspect of this being like something you would be made for vinyl, as in you have a side A, a side B, 4 tracks each, which I greatly appreciated. Now, in doing this, you have more room to focus on each piece and each track. This is the album that they had the most differences within each track in comparison to the former discographies. Up until about... Oh shit, which one was it? It was at that time. Give me a moment. Up until about To Drown the Sun in Wine. That was whenever they kind of went old school for me, which I loved because they went back more to like Evangelion, Satanist era album. Now the opening, Doppler and I we were kind of toying with the idea and almost like betting on where Sowing Salt would be placed because we felt like it might be more of like second or third from the end, when in actuality it was a second track. And that shocked the hell out of me. And for me to listen to an album, I don't like listening to singles necessarily. I like listening to the concept of the album. I don't personally think that they ordered this album correctly. In fact, I found it difficult in a way, or a bit of a challenge as to where I would probably have actually placed Sowing Salt, because
that's probably why it seems like songs are kind of just thrown in haphazardly to me.
Yeah. If I had it my way, or if I had conducted this album in such a way, I probably would have put either Sowing Salt at the 3rd or 4th track. At some point, in a way, I almost would have put it maybe between Luciferion and To Drown the Sun in Wine, because in some aspects you could put it as the 1st track, have Shadow Elite 2nd, and then Should Have God 3rd, because the Shadow Elite lyrically introduces what the album is. And to be honest, I honestly believe that they should have just called this album The Shadow Elite. They really should have, knowing the context of what this album is about. The Shadow Elite would have been a better album title in my opinion, which most people agree. Or a lot of discussions that I've read, a lot of people agree. Sowing Salt, I think this album would have failed if it had been placed first, because it is so vastly, it is one of the kind of softest and yet most different track on the album. It is a march, and it is very different in comparison to everything else. People with their attention spans these days and how they're going to perceive what could be the rest of the album, they're going to look at the 1st and 2nd track. They're going to see how it is. If they like it, they'll continue. If not, they're probably just going to toss it to the side. They'll get to it later, 3 or 4 months later maybe, if they're like, oh wait, that's right, I meant to listen to this. So I agree that maybe Sowing Salt shouldn't have been placed first, but Sowing Salt honestly should probably have been sonically on either the last album or I Loved You at Your Darkest. It wasn't as much of a stark contrast to the rest of the album as one might think at first, but it's still in the concept of the album. Yes, it is. However, aside from all that, aside from placement, this album was spectacularly done. The Shadow Elite was a fantastic opening track because it showed people who this album is made for. This is made for the rebels. This is made for the alternatives. This is made for the outcasts, those who don't fit in anywhere else or aren't like anyone else. This is for you. And then the shit of God should have been placed right underneath it, because lyrically and meaningfully wise, they go hand in hand as far as I'm concerned. And again, Luciferion goes into that same concept. This is the era of being able to be free and live freely. Drown the Sun in Wine, immediately aggressive and fast, and it was right off the bat. And it showed what Behemoth is used to be known for, and what a lot of people felt like they've dropped off the map from. They still showed in this album they have what it takes to reclaim the title, or hold on to the title of blackened death metal, even though they kind of gone more to a black and roll kind of thing, or just a softer aspect. I don't know if it's getting older or just kind of wanting to do something different, but they still will annihilate. I greatly enjoyed Drown the Sun in Wine. It kind of gave me flashbacks to the Satanist album. Nomen Barbarum. I enjoyed the chanting in the beginning, and then it goes right into the pummeling rhythm, and it had really good guitar work in this piece. And it gave some variation in dynamics to the sections that go along with the rhythm. And I really enjoyed the fret slides that were within the bridge, and then the chanting afterwards. It was a really cool piece that, again, we began seeing on the Satanist album, where they started going more into the atmospheric aspect of their sound that they have now. O Venus Come. Of course, there were some very distorted guitars and individual instruments that came into the album. This is a very atmospheric piece, and it shows the very dark spirituality that Behemoth holds within being in the occult. They are not afraid to shy away from showing that within their material. That's kind of what they're known for, is occultic aspects and some darker poetry and stuff that no one really considers anymore within literature. But this one was the track that reminded me so much of O Father, O Satan, O Son. And it had the potential. I haven't listened to it fully in the car yet. I kind of listened to it in earbuds before work. But this one I felt like could have easily bring on a state of trance. And for anyone that is actively practicing the occult, this is something that I feel like they could listen to go into a trance-like state to begin their practice. Which a lot of people... So there's some black metal, especially like Watain. Each album for them and each live show for them, Eric has stated, every time is a ritual, which Behemoth will do, but they're a little bit more mainstream about it. So if there's any confusion or if things feel off, it's because I feel like they are doing a ritual, and this is their magic, their black magic that they do. They do it musically in some aspect of paganism as a bard when it comes to the OBD, of Order of Bards of Eights and Druids. And the solo in this, it came in very well, and it wasn't overwhelming, and it really complemented the overall of the track. And the ending of this, it brought that same distorted beginning that kind of really tied in that ominous feeling. The last track, I loved the opening of nice old school beginning of plugging in equipment to bring in this menacing build up that just not a lot of people like these days, that people make memes and joke about of what's true cult black metal. And I really enjoyed this, but yet there was an ominous female vocal in this that they haven't really used before, or they have, but it's been quite a long time. And then everything comes in aggressive, but yet there's the sound of chanting, guitar work, drums. Everything is much older, like the sound of the Satanist album, and it feels more like a black mass, which I absolutely loved. And there was some acoustic work in this. It has been so long since Behemoth has had acoustic work. The last time I heard acoustics was in Evangelion. Yeah, it was at the Left Hand of God. They had that acoustic opening, so this reminded me of that. And then they ended in what could only be best described as atmospheric black metal. And then everything came and went. They stopped, and they finished with a very dark acoustic that ended the album in the most beautiful of ways. If you're listening to this album as, I'm going to listen to some tunes, I just want some heavy hitting, this is not going to be a good album for you. If you're wanting something where you can have almost a spiritual experience, this is what this is. And Behemoth has been doing this more so in recent years, especially with starting off with Satanist. They did this with I Loved You at Your Darkest. Nurgle kind of did this more in creatively within their last Opus album, Opus Contra album. And they're doing it again in this. They said, come here all. Basically what he said in God Equals Dog, if I am the gap, what was it that he said? It was in God Equals Dog, I can't remember offhand. If I am the missing link between the pig and the divine, I will cast the pearls before the swine. He will be the bridge between those that are lost, that have no way, that have felt like they've been fucked over by Christianity or any kind of right-hand path belief. And they will say, here, you may fit in with us. Here's what we're about, and let me allow us to give you our Black Mass and what we're about spiritually. That's what this album said to me.
Here it is. It's if I am a missing link between the pig and the divine, I shall cast the pearls before the swine.
Yes.
I am no good shepherd on an ox, but a solitude of the loneliest star. Like 1,000 shrines subsumed into the void, like a dead space in between the suns. Is God to live in a dog? No. But the highest are of us. Is a God to live in a dog? No, but the highest are of us.
Yeah, and that was whenever the Child's Choir was going on. Yeah. But that's essentially what this album is. It is a continuation, I feel like, of both a Satanist and I Love You at Your Darkest. Oh, there are 2 albums before this I felt like was more of just a creative experiment. This album was the continuation of what they had already done and were already working on. For that reason, because of the amazing guitar work, going back to some aspects of a more atmospheric traditional black metal, and the spirituality behind it, this album for me was absolutely a 9, no less. I don't agree entirely with the tracking placement of the album, just because that gives an overall feel of it for some people like me who listen to albums listen to stuff within the context of an album. So I have to get this album a solid 9 because of beginning to understand what this album is about. The production value was incredible for what it was and what it was meant to be. The atmosphere was amazing. The use of instruments was fantastic and mind-blowing. And them going back to more of what their magnum opus was astounding. So for me, yeah, solid 9.
I told you we'd disagree.
I just explained it in about an hour.
Yeah, really. So you'd still give it a 9 after saying the placements of the songs are probably a little benign to you?
Yes, the placement of the tracks were a little off for me, but that still doesn't take away from the production of it and knowing and how everything else was still organized, and especially like the half to 3/4 of the way through and to the end, how astounding that was to me, and it fed some of my desire for their older sound.
I would assume that like just the placements, because I mean that was a problem that both me and Doppler had with the album, was it was some of the placements of the songs were kind of seemed a little off.
So the only thing that was off for me was Sowing Salt. The rest of everything else was fantastic. Lyrically and both instrumentally, everything meaning wise fit well. I think that the latter half of the album, which you could basically say side B of this vinyl, was them going old school, and it was a nod to our old school fans.
Alrighty.
So, any other thoughts from you guys?
Nope.
Nope.
Nice. All right. You're welcome for that long-winded explanation of why I enjoyed this album and the details.
Well,
of
when
it.
it's one of your favorite bands, there's biased opinions going to be made from Mr. Analytical.
Well, there will be, but I also have but again, Behemoth is one of those groups that whenever you begin to understand what they're going for and like their history, it's almost like you begin to appreciate it a little bit more. At least for me. For the average Joe, I can understand how this would probably be more at most a 7 or 7.5. I get that, but anyways.
Well, and I mean, again, we state that this is all our opinion too.
This is all our
so,
opinions.
I mean,
Very subjective. So yeah,
Like I said, everybody's gonna have different opinions here.
yeah. This was just something that was right up my alley. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Hope everything else you enjoy. Until next time, keep rolling heavy.